Good morning. It's really a privilege to be here. I mostly come to the Zendo now in the mornings, and it's really sweet. And there's a very small group here in person in the mornings, and there's an intimacy to that. It's also wonderful to be here in this full room, and there's an intimacy to our zazen practice here together. Especially, I appreciate the ability to set aside some more time to practice a little more kind of an intensified way. I also want to say hello to all those out in the Zoomosphere. It's really great to see you. And I want to give a special hello to my partner Torei, who's in the car, who's on here. She had went to see Bob Savarin, who's on our healing list, who is struggling with a lot of health issues, and we pray for his well-being in Ohio. So my name is Torei, and my pronouns are they, them, and I'm a senior student at the Village Zendo. And I want to start today with a land acknowledgement. I don't always do that, and sometimes it could really feel performative, especially when nothing further is said about the people whose lands we are occupying. But as we approach the federal holiday, known in the US as Thanksgiving, I want to acknowledge that our Zendo is on the occupied land of the Manhattan Territory, which means hilly island, which was the land of the Lenape people. And for those on Zoom, you're all in different places, but I looked up where the headquarters of Zoom is, and it's in San Jose, California, which is the lands of the Muwekame people of the Ohlone Nation. The indigenous people I mentioned, they were not just displaced from their lands, but the Lenape and Muwekame people were victims of genocide, perpetrated by European ancestors in pre- and post-colonial times. A colony, the US, that today most of us benefit from, at least economically. And despite all the evidence and criteria that is met, till this day, this genocide is still debated, denied, erased, or ignored. A process we still see played out in genocides committed around the world, from the Armenian one to the Holocaust, and most recently, the one debated over in Gaza. But as a US-based Sangha, we are called to see the brutal legacy of the settler colonialism on our land and the lands it sends arms to. Right now, I see this legacy across our nation as ICE militias are targeting and terrorizing, torturing, and displacing citizens, immigrants, refugees, and migrants. And most of them are who we now call Latinos, many indigenous to the Americas, from Mexico and South and Central America. We might see this as separate from the genocide of the native people of this land, but it's not. The economic and social destabilizations in the Americas are linked back, as we say in our atonement ceremony, to the evil karma of that project, all the way to us and to me, in ways that I'm sure Latin America history professors like our abbot, Shinryu, could expand on. But I know enough to know that indigenous people from those lands escaping and seeking food and safety are not separate from this history. And neither is the way we treat these human beings. And in fact, after I wrote about this, I learned about a case of a 24-year-old Native woman who was born in Phoenix and is a member of the Arizona Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. She was arrested for a lapsed driver's license and spent a month in a jail in Arizona. She was scheduled to be released on November 11th. But what should have been a routine process was complicated and delayed by erroneously issued ICE detainer. She was ultimately allowed to leave on November 12th. Her sister said that it was terrifying to be told, and her name was Maria Jacobo. She said it was terrifying that she was taken by federal agents, especially because no one appeared willing to correct the mistake at first. She goes, "My sister said, how is she going to be deported if she's Native American? And we have proof." This, the reason that this mistake happened is that the Polk County Jail has a 287 agreement with the Immigration and Customs Informant, ICE. Not all counties in the United States are willing to participate in this agreement. And recently I heard from the sheriff in Charlotte, in North Carolina, who's a Democrat and has refused to sign that, so does not participate in aiding ICE in any way, which has led now to the threat of ICE agents coming to Charlotte, North Carolina, and increasing that enforcement. So I'm sharing that is because this is one way that counties and cities across the United States can maybe in some way resist some of this by refusing to participate and helping, like sheriff departments and law enforcement refusing to participate in this process, which affects the citizens and migrants and immigrants of this country. And how else can we respond, all of us? Maybe we want to rethink how we commemorate Thanksgiving itself, the day itself. Some of us might want to engage in protest, as we did together as a Sangha at the No Kings March. There's ways to show up in immigration court as protective presence. We could sign petitions. We could engage in civil disobedience. And also voting for candidates that vow to support and protect all human life, including our immigrants, regardless of their status. One of these recent candidates is our New York mayor-elect, Zohran Mamdani, who is subject himself to an onslaught of hate, partially because of his own immigration and cultural identity. One video of him showing support to a currently more vulnerable New York community has stuck with me. It was a recording of him showing up as a then mayoral candidate on Halloween night to a queer party in a club hosted by Poppy Juice. Poppy Juice, for those who have not heard of them, and I, being an older queer who now rarely goes out past 9 p.m., have not, is an art and music collective that celebrates the lives of queer and trans people of color based in Brooklyn. I found myself watching over and over a clip they posted on their Instagram feed of him walking into the party and greeted with ecstatic cheers by the participants, all dressed, of course, in amazing, colorful Halloween costumes. Mamdani, sporting a corporate-looking suit, button-up shirt and tie, greeted them back with great enthusiasm. As he bounded up onto the stage, he then said the following: "I want to say a deep thank you to Poppy Juice for creating a space for queer and trans New Yorkers. In a city where so much is about struggle, it's so important to have space for joy." He then said a few words about voting on November 4th, hugged the MC dressed like a sexy sailor, and was gone, leaving behind him a room of queer and trans folks of color who felt seen, validated, and acknowledged by a mayoral candidate like likely never before. And for myself, a trans New Yorker, what really moved me was his focus on trans and queer joy. Yes, we are being targeted as a community around this nation in the most dehumanizing ways, both legally, medically, and in our educational systems. And of course, for folks of color who are queer, especially from Latino communities, are doubly and triply so. But he chose to highlight joy, which to me is connected to the joy and ease that our practice puts us in touch with. The joy of living our true expression, as is the name of our temple. The joy that comes from being in the present moment in life with our full selves. So even when there is intense hardship, we can experience both the pain and joy and everything else. The relief one feels when we cease to run away from ourselves and turn towards who we are with compassion, curiosity, and understanding, allows us to endure the most difficult circumstances. How can we, in the midst of everything, find the place for joy and the grief of being our full human selves and include everything? When I was thinking of a koan to share in relation to this, I came across case 87 in the Blue Cliff Record. Yunman, teaching his community, said, "Medicine and disease subdue each other. The whole earth is medicine. What is yourself? The world which there is so much sickness and delusion, racial, sexual, and gender-based oppression, is the same world that includes the medicine to the suffering from this, our liberation, and our joy. In fact, this path of healing, the medicine to our suffering, is included in everything this world presents to us." The koan then points to the question, what is your self? So in thinking about myself, I know that I am someone who suffers at times with debilitating waves of depression. In those times, I can lose touch with all the things that bring me meaning, that give me a reason to want to stay engaged, and I sometimes feel overwhelmed, like I'm drowning. I have had over the years a lot of therapy, together with my various practices, including yoga and Zen, and with the help of loving relationships and communities like like this one, found skills and ways to move from the space of darkness into a more life-affirming place. One where I could still see fully my curtains of despair, because they are also part of me. But I could also see beyond them or with them or in the midst of them the preciousness of my one life. When I could hold it all, when I could be reminded that myself is not one thing. Then I am my grief, joy, sorrow, wanting both to die and to live. Then I could truly feel myself, and the whole world becomes medicine. The virus is part of the vaccine. The poison is part of the antidote. The dropping away of one thing can lead to the birth of something new. So ask yourself right now, as you're sitting here, right now, what is yourself? I don't know, and I'll go back to Mayor Mamdani, if he will be able to deliver on all his promises. He is a politician after all. As a teenager, when he ran for school president at Bronx High School of Science, he promised fresh juice in the cafeteria from fruit carts in the area. This was his world. He fully brought himself to that campaign in high school. But as WNYC reported this week, as they visited his old high school and spoke to current students, he failed to deliver on this promise. Something he acknowledges. But I want to hope that he continues to stay as present as he was that night at Poppy Juice, and in touch with that joy, so that he could infuse his administration with a sense of purpose, hope, and possibility, with a focus on the world being the medicine, that our interconnected humanity continues to guide him and us. So for those who don't know, I am a psychotherapist. This is another way that I use the ingredients of my life, including my suffering, to support others in similar predicaments. My work on a daily basis is sitting with, as the koan says, with both the medicine and the illness, and seeing that they are not separate. Helping people face the not knowing of their lives, even how this whole process of therapy might unfold. It never quite proceeds. For those of you who are in therapy, I recommend it. It never proceeds the way we think it will. I think of one of my clients, a wonderful man in his late 40s, who started working with me as he was pursuing treatment for stage 4 cancer. I will call him Alex, which is not his real name, and I changed some identifying details as well. His diagnosis was serious, and he knew treatment might not work, and that he may die. He had 3 children, 2 of them quite young, a loving wife, and a meaningful, successful career. He wanted help in living in face of his illness, even as he knew he might be facing death. For 16 months, we sat in the unknown, trying conventional treatments that ultimately failed, and then finding difficult clinical trials that had brutal side effects. Along the way, he spoke about his anxiety about leaving his family behind. Will they be okay when he dies? What was harder was giving himself permission for his own grief about having to potentially leave this life. I shared with him Isa's haiku. This dewdrop world is a dewdrop world. And yet, Isa wrote this haiku after the death of his infant daughter. In fact, he had already lost 2 sons before that. In this haiku, he reflects on accepting impermanence, the world as a dewdrop. And yet, we carry the sorrow of loss, of letting go, our human condition, which connects us to both the disease and the medicine. And then, when all the medication, the treatments, the trials did not work, our work became on accepting the reality that Alex was going to die. Not only he, but also I needed to accept that. And with that, our work shifted as I agreed to come see him in his home, as travel to my office became too difficult, as he was in a lot of pain and was getting weaker. I reached out to the Zendo IO list to Sangha members, as we have such a rich community of chaplains and end-of-life caregivers in our community, for advice on how to support him as he struggles with more pain and discomfort. And I received amazing and supportive suggestions from so many people in our Sangha. I was nervous when I headed to his home. This was the first time I had transitioned from my role as a traditional therapist to hospice care. And I came clutching a bottle of essential lavender oil, some breathing exercises to do, a plan. I rang the doorbell, and he opened the door, looking thinner and more frail, but still very much himself. He led me to the kitchen, and he asked me if I wanted a cup of coffee. How could I say no? He had the most beautiful espresso machine. He crafted me the most exquisite cup of macchiato in this perfect small glass cup. It was the most delicious cup of coffee I have ever tasted. As I sat with him on the balcony of his home, looking over a blooming magnolia tree, drinking coffee together, the sounds of his family and home drifting up to where we were sitting, I felt so strongly in that moment, his aliveness and his life, more than ever before. He was dying in the midst of so much life he had given birth to. Life that will continue after he is gone. Just like I still have the memory of that taste of coffee that's mixed in with the smell of the lavender oil that he gratefully took from me and breathed in from his own hands, soothing and calming himself. At one point during that visit, he talked about coming to terms with his death. But then he looked at me and said, and yet. We looked at each other. Not much more had to be said. I had come bearing what I thought was the medicine. But what I received from him was an even greater solve. We met a few more times at home, and the last time I saw him, he was moving in and out of consciousness. It was wild, hard, and there was some beauty in there too, and it was very, very sad. When I left, I looked up, and he was standing in the hallway, bathed in a ray of light coming in from the skylight. He looked so beautiful. He died a few days after that, and I deeply miss him. Enkyo Roshi, in a talk on this koan from 1998, says this. So what is the self? What is the medicine? We have to enter where we are. We can't go and find Zen and say it is going to cure us. That all we have to do is learn some koans, guilty, or do some studies, and then we're going to get it. We have to enter where we are with our own wounds, our own suffering. I love what she wrote here. But I'll just add that we also enter it not just through our own suffering, but also through our joy, through all of our experiences. There was a line from Psalm 118 that Alex heard from his rabbi that he shared with me. Min ha-metzar karati ya, anani b'merchav ya. From the narrow and light place I call out to you, and you answer me from the great expanse. He was not religious and had no history with the Psalms, but because I grew up in a traditional Jewish home, I knew this psalm well, had sung it in my childhood actually, so I could sing it for him. He asked me to record it, and he listened to it in his final days. I think of this now, about this beautiful line, and I want it to be a comfort for all of you. When you are in that narrow place, tight from suffering and despair, you might call out. And there is an answer. Like an echo that comes back to you from the great expanse. If you listen, you can hear yourself reflected back from the world that you are not separate from in all the sickness and all the healing. Mina metzar karati ya, anani b'merchav ya. This is my verse for you. Thank you.